This week we're going to be taking a look at the Sony MDP-600 Laserdisc player. When most people think about Laserdisc players, the name Pioneer is usually what comes to mind. But Sony weighed in with a few models back in the day, and just like Pioneer, they did come up with one that would play both sides of the disc without having to take the disc out and physically flipping it over. I picked this unit up on Craigslist about 20 minutes from my house. $10, and it came with a stack of discs, including a copy of Blade Runner. So I'm excited about trying to get this up and going. What I know about it is I plugged it in, you hit the power switch, and it will turn on, but it turns right off immediately afterwards. So don't know, power supply maybe, some type of mechanical problem that would be hung up, causing it to switch back off. So we're going to be taking a look at this and see if we can get it up and going. If we can get it working, we're going to hook it up over to the Samsung TV via the S-Video connection in the back. That's the only TV I have left that still has an S-Video connection on it. This week's intro music, we're listening to the Somewhere in Time album by Iron Maiden. And there's a little bit of a loose connection between the Blade Runner movie and this album. Those of you familiar with Iron Maiden would probably know what that connection is. But the song we're playing off of that is The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. I'm going to say it's probably my favorite song off the album, and there's a lot of good songs on this record. So we'll hear a little bit of this, and we'll get started on the Sony Laserdisc player. All right, let's come in real quick and have a look at the front of the unit. Not a whole bunch to look at. There's a few buttons here though. Obviously you'll get a momentary power switch. There's the window for your IR remote. 1/4-inch headphone jack with a level control. Moving up to the top here. We do have a quick start button. I'm not sure what that's all about. Once we get it fixed, we can find that out. FL display, which I assume lets you toggle between the various time modes for the front panel display, and that window is built into the front cover here, which I assume slides down and the tray comes out. At the top we got scan forward and scan back, and then we have ACS, AMS, and I'm going to assume that this is automatic chapter search. I would assume that definitely would let you switch between chapters with these buttons, kind of like switching between the tracks on a CD. We got an open and close button, followed by side A, side B, and play, pause and stop. And then down below we have a mic jack with a level control and also an echo effect you can add into it. Since Pioneer was so successful with their machines being karaoke compatible, I would assume that was Sony's idea to try to mimic that and make theirs useful as a karaoke machine as well. We'll look through the stack of discs. We have obviously the 2-disc widescreen edition of Blade Runner. And this is a sampler disc that probably came with the unit. Doesn't look like it's been played very much. Still got the cellophane on it. We have the Hunt for Red October. Copy of Raiders of the Lost Ark, also widescreen. Copy of Top Gun. We have Sleepers, very good movie with Jason Patric in it. Independence Day. We have Die Hard, the original. followed by Striking Distance, Patriot Games, Harrison Ford, Jurassic Park, and then a copy of Speed. So got a few discs that came with this. So I think the first thing we'll do, let's go ahead and get the top of it off, get it hooked back up, and I'll show you what I seen when I initially hooked it up yesterday when I picked it up. And then from that point, we'll see if we can figure out what's going on with it. All right, picking back up, and here's what we got. Switcher on, and then immediately right back off. And so can't really get a good look at the power supply in this position, so we need to get it out, go through the caps, make sure we don't have a issue there. But if I don't have a power supply problem, I would suspect that there's something in the mechanism that's binding up, but everything here seems to be moving pretty freely from what I can tell. It doesn't look like there's anything hung up. So normally if you do have something like that that's creating a problem, you'll hear the hum of the motor trying to get to its next cycle point, but I'm certainly not hearing anything like that when I turn it on. It's just a click, a few clicks after that, and then shuts immediately right off. So let's go ahead and eliminate the easy thing first. We'll get the power supply out, get it unplugged, and start going through the caps to see if we can get an easy one. So give me a second for that. We'll get that out of there and have a look. All right, we're going to pick back up. Got the power supply out of the unit. Pretty easy. Couple of screws, and then you'll have to use a pair of needle nose pliers to push in on the tabs of that plastic retainer, and then the board comes out. At first, when this board was in and you can't really see anything, I just assumed it was a switch mode power supply, but as it turns out, this is just a switching and regulator board right underneath the main board. Tucked up underneath here, there's a transformer. So we're going to assume everything at this point is okay there. And our situation or problem would be here. Right off the get-go, we'll pull this down a little closer so we can kind of see. Notice the pico fuses. These type of fuses are very popular throughout the 90s for this type of equipment. Instead of using the larger size fuses on secondary lines, they would put in these small fuses, and they're both 2.5 amps. So the first thing I was going to do is check those, but take a look at this. I don't know if I can get you in close enough to see that, but there is some definite issue there. Yeah, that is a definite problem right there. Man, that would sure be nice to know that that's the only thing wrong with this. Let's do this. Let's go ahead. I'm going to check the fuses, and then we'll go through the power supply as I had planned on doing, making sure there's no other caps. But that one has clearly got an issue. There is no doubt about that. And so let's go ahead and I want to check these two pico fuses first. You can tell that these two are good by looking at them. And then we'll start to go through the caps one by one. So let's do that real quick. No trouble. No trouble there. So let's get rid of this meter and bring in the ESR. Well, I think we can pretty much guarantee that there is no way in hell this is going to be okay. And there isn't. It's just barely moving the needle. I don't know if I have it in the shot good enough for you to see it. Let's see. And it's been leaking out. Barely moves the needle. Let's move over to another one. Doesn't seem like there's anything going on there. All right, we'll flip it over. And there's a plastic guard here that I'm going to have to get off. And that's going to require taking out a couple more of those plastic tabs. And that'll gonna give us an access to the bottom of the board, and we'll just kind of take a visual inspection of that. And right there where that cap is, which would be C33, there isn't any leakage that's come through the backside of the board, so that's a good thing. I don't really see anything else that's jumping out at me. So let's go through and check a few more of these caps. In particular, this one and this one. I don't see any signs of leakage coming out of that one. The one that was leaking is 100 mic at 35 volt. Hard to get both of these things in this shot at the same time. And so we'll just listen for the beep. If you hear the beep, you know it's good. If not, I'll tell you. And that cap is low. And that's 100 mic at 35 as well. So these two are definitely on the list to be changed. And then the higher one over here. Peg in the meter, no trouble. Then we'll start with these three, which appear to be 1000 mic at 25. And all three are burying the meter. And I'm going to assume there's nothing wrong with the larger ones, but we will check. We already checked those two. Those two seem to be okay. So we'll do the larger ones now. No trouble at all. And then we only have one left, two left over here. We'll check those real fast. Wait a second. Yeah, that's not a cap. It's like a memory. I think it's a memory backup or a coil. It's a coil. So that leaves just this one. And that one, you can tell there's something not right there. That one's been leaking too. Another 100 mic at 50. And it is bad. So right off the get-go, 3 100 mic at 50s. I believe the ones over here are actually 100 mic at 25 or 35, but we'll put 100 mic at 50s in it. So before we do any of that, let's go ahead and remove the main board and get a look down inside there where the transformer is and make sure there's anything else that's going on. So give me a second for that and we'll come back. All right, coming back in. Got the board removed from the back, which has a very small back panel piece that kind of notches into the main piece, and this board attaches to that. and found out that we've got a couple of film cables that we definitely don't want to wind up ripping. I'm sure they would come out if we needed them to, but just taking that little bit apart gives me a really good idea of what's down there. And of course, it's just going to be your transformer type AC line components. There's a choke filter there, and there's a mainline fuse that's really tough to see, but it's down there. And then it just comes off with this little 5-pin wire that hooks into the power supply board. So there isn't really anything there I think we need to be concerned with. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a bunch more power supply components that could be creating a problem. Now, whether we'll run into issues here or not, I don't know. I think let's go ahead and replace the caps in the power supply. Let's put it back together, and we'll see if it'll just naturally turn on and work the way it's supposed to, or if there's a little bit more we need to look at. But you can see here that Sony kind of adopted Pioneer's method of doing it by using basically like a roller coaster for the laser to ride on. That's how it makes the journey from playing the underside of the disc and then flips itself over to play the top side of the disc. And we'll get to see that in action once we get it up and get it running. But for right now, it looks like it's 3 100 mic 50 volt caps, or one 100 mic 50 volt cap and 2 100 mic at 35 volt, but they'll all be replaced with 100 mic at 50. So let me find some parts and we'll get those installed into the power supply board. All right, we're going to pick back up, and what I found in my part stash was 3 100 mic at 63 volt, and these are Nippon caps. That's their symbol on those. And one thing I found interesting about these leaking capacitors here is that all of the good capacitors, they're all Nippon. They have Nippon's logo on them. The two here are Elna caps, and they're fine. There's no leakage there. But the 3 that we're going to have to change are all Nichicon. Now, these are the 85-degree caps, but still, this isn't the first time I've seen Nichicon caps leak. And this is not even a switch mode power supply. This is an analog supply. And so my question is if they're so damn good, how come they leak all the time? This cap here, we checked, and this one was good. It's a 470 at 25. After we replace the ones we know are bad, we're pulling that one out and looking underneath, because it's got me concerned that all the ones that are Nichicon branded are the ones that are leaking. So let's go ahead and we'll start with this one first, and try not to burn up any wires at the time that we're doing this. It's going to be C33, which is going to be right there. Yeah, and once you start heating it up, you can smell it. It smells terrible. Absolutely terrible. Yeah, that looks bad. Let's go ahead and clean that up. We'll get a cotton swab with a little. All right, picking back up where we left off. Actually, somebody walked in right when I was swabbing off that leakage, and so I had to pause the clip. But now we're ready. We'll go ahead and put in our first cap. And we'll leave just a little bit of room there. I'm just going to kind of move that over to the side a little bit, and we'll leave a little bit of a gap there. Not that much. And that'll give it a little room to breathe. And we'll snip those off. And let's move on to the next one. I'm going to snip that off, just try to get that a little closer. There we go. It's a little bit cleaner that way. And the next one is going to be C31 right there. Don't really see the leakage coming out of that one. That was coming out of the first one. Oh, I guess there is. Sizzle, sizzle. Smell it. Stinks. And that one fell out. Again, doesn't really, you can tell it's been leaking. It doesn't really look bad, but you can tell it's been leaking. We're going to clean that off too. You can see that there's some liquid in that hole right there. We'll just kind of flush it out with the acetone. On the other side. There we go. And I'm going to run a probe through those holes just to get rid of anything that might be kind of lurking down in the hole. And we'll take care of that. And now let's put our second one in. Looks good. There we go. Let's go ahead and take this 470 at 25 out. Since it's Nichicon as well, I think I'm just going to go ahead and change it. Don't want to run the risk of there being anything happen after the fact. We'll just go ahead and switch it out. C35, right? C35. Don't smell anything. Let's see. No, it looks okay, but I'm paranoid about it now, so I'm going to switch it. Get that cleaned up. And a 470. I should have one in my tray here. Maybe. No, 220. All right, give me a second. Let me find a 470 and we'll put a new one in there. All right, we'll pick back up. Wasn't able to locate a brand new 470 at 25. Don't want to put 1,000 at 25 in this when I got plenty of good used caps laying around. This is a Jamicon 470 at 25. I took this out of a newer Sony HDMI receiver that got hit by lightning. And so we're going to use this in place of the Nichicon 470 at 25. And we should be just fine. Trying to hold it in place is going to be the real challenge, I think. Yeah, let's stagger the leads a little bit here. That should do it. I already checked it, but we'll check it again once we get it in circuit. All right. We're just listening for the beat, and we are pegging the meter. So let's move on to the last one that we have, which is the 100 mic at 50 down here, which does have some visible signs of leakage. Let's get that out of there. And that was what? 63. Again, trying to avoid burning up any wiring here. And we'll have some smell off of this one, for sure. Yep. Yeah, that one's leaking out of both leads, it looks like. Again, good Nichicon quality there. And we'll flush the holes with the same stuff. And try to get it all out. Put a probe down in it to get it off the sides of the holes. And that should do it. And then our last 100 mic at 63 volt cap. Looks good. All right, let's backtrack and just look. Make sure I didn't put anything in backwards, which is easy to do, especially when you're not focused entirely on what you're doing and you're trying to make a video out of it. That looks good. That looks good. And that looks good. And that's going to be all of our... There's some kind of liquid right there. I don't know what the hell that is. I wonder if it came out of that cap. I wonder where the hell that came from. All right, let's clean that up. I know that transistor ain't leaking out electrolyte. Yeah, I'm not sure. Unless it leaked out of that cap that was there before the new one was. I'm not sure. I don't see anything else. You can kind of see under the edge of these, and everything else looks nice and dry, so could have been something that I got there just by chance, or maybe it was leaking out of this one. I'm not sure. Everything looks good. I'm going to go ahead and get that board back installed, and already got everything tightened down on the top board. I went ahead and put all that back together. So let's go ahead and get this put back in, and let's see if we can get it on, and if we can get it on and get it to stay on, we'll start to do a little testing with it. We'll go easy at first. We'll just put a CD in. And for all the people that don't care about the video projects, just think of this as a really large CD player that we're working on. So give me a second for that. I'll get it put back in, and we'll see if we got a winner. Okay, we're going to pick back up. Power supply reinstalled, everything back the way it was before we started. All of our new caps there in place. And I'll show you what I've already found out. Exact same issue. It is still shutting off. And so, again, I don't see, or rather, I don't hear any strain in this mechanism. Nothing that would indicate to me that there's anything bound up that's causing it to shut off. Without question, we know we had issues here, so that work wasn't done for no reason. That would have had to have been done anyway. It's just that we're addressing the secondary problem and not the primary one. One thing I did notice though, and we're going to see if I can get a shot of this. It's kind of hard to see it. There we go. Let's take a look at the laser when we first energize this thing and turn it on. It's got a really hard, thump to it, like the focus coil is having some kind of trouble or something. And so that would be a good enough indication to me that what I didn't want to do, we're going to have to remove this board, and we're going to have to look on this board for more leaking capacitors. I can't see underneath it, but I don't think there's any of those surface mount silver ones. I would already know that there'd be a big problem if those were there, because we would know those would already be bad. But they all look like through-hole caps, and so we need to get this board off and see if there's anything there that would be a red flag that we need to change. Just look for more of the same, more leakage, anything that would lead us to believe that there's something in the servo section that's causing that focus coil to freak out. So I'm going to take my time and get this board off. I don't want to rip any of the ribbon connectors on it. I can see two, there may be more. We'll get that off, and then we'll go a little bit further with it. But this is the kind of thing that's to be expected. This is an old unit, and any of these units from this time frame, maybe doesn't even need to be this old, is that a CD player, anything that's heavily reliant upon capacitors, is capacitors will dry up over time, or they'll leak over time. And once those signals passing through the servo section or the systems control section, once those signals are noisy and they don't have that filterization anymore, all of a sudden weird shit will happen, all kinds of weird problems will happen. I don't know that that's the case, but I know enough that I feel comfortable there's not a mechanism issue. I don't hear a motor trying to bind up anything that would create a scenario of this shutting off. There is still a possibility there could be a micro switch somewhere that's not closing or not opening correctly. That could be it. But based on what we've seen over here already, I want to take this apart. We're going to have a look at this and see if we can spot anything. So give me a minute for that and we'll come back. All right, we're going to come back in. This is going to be day 2. Was able to get the main PCB out of the unit, and this would give us a really good look at the laser assembly and kind of how they use that cool roller coaster deal to get it to go from the bottom side to the top side. Looking at this and the way that the focus coil was kind of popping that laser up and down made me think about a few units I've seen, not Laserdisc, but CD player, where this flexible cable would develop an intermittent connection and create that type of problem, as well as some other problems. But this is one of the later versions of that that's really nice and flexible, so I don't want to condemn that yet. Getting the main board out, looking for more capacitors that would be creating problems. I did find a sub power supply section covered up by a top and bottom shield. I removed that, and we have 4 1000 mic at 6.3 volt caps, which are all leaking. I've also went and covered the entire board, checking every capacitor physically by looking at it and with an ESR meter, and every one that has a red mark on it is going to need to be changed, and there's about a dozen here. There's about as much red on this circuit board as there is on one of my high school test papers. So we got a little work to do. These all are going to need to be changed in order to get this thing up and going and functional, you know, reliably. Could have probably gotten away with just one. There's one that's actually really leaking, but the rest of these, again, I just don't trust any of this now. I'm so gun shy because of all the other ones that were bad. So I think the best thing to do is go ahead and change everything that's even remotely creating a problem. And of course, these are all over here in this servo section, which I would assume is part of operation of the focus coil and the laser, the mechanic portion of the laser. And of course, there's other power supply components here that regulate voltage. And I think that this is a lot to do with downsizing these capacitors. Some of these, like I said, 1000 mic at 6.3, this is in a very small package, and trying to shrink these down to miniature size to get everything on here comes with some complications, especially over time. So, but there's quite a few, and I have numerous circuit boards from newer or later model things that have solid, perfectly good capacitors. I'm going to change them all out, and then we're going to go from there and see if we can get this thing up and going. But yeah, it's a little bit more than I thought it would be, but then again, I'm not surprised by any of this. So I think the thing to do is I'm going to get started on this. It's probably take an hour or so, and I'll come back in with an update. But we're getting there little by little. All of this just to get this guy up and going so we can check out our Blade Runner disc. So stand by and I'll give you an update as soon as I've made some forward progress on this. All right, we're going to fast forward about an hour or so. Progress has been made. Got all of the caps that I wanted to swap out changed. There was even a few bipolars in this section that I decided not to change after a second round of testing with some heat applied to their leads underneath. One of the themes that I seen running throughout this whole thing in this section over here was all of the 47 mic at 35 volt caps were bad. One coming off of this motor driver IC, and the ones in this section, which I believe now are probably power supply related and not so much servo system related. So 47 mic at 35 volts, all bad. Coming back over to the secondary supply, every 1000 mic at 6.3 volt cap was bad. I'd initially said that I only seen one physically leaking, but it didn't take much just to heat each one of those up, and the stuff started flowing out of it. You could smell it. So I changed every cap inside the power supply. The last thing I wanted to have to do was go back into this area a second time after I had everything started back up, so I decided just to change them all. I used some Elna caps out of a Denon audio video receiver, and those caps were just a little bigger than this shield would accommodate, so I went ahead and notched out the sides of the case to accommodate those caps, both sides and in the back too. And this will also aid in a little bit of ventilation. Didn't damage any of our structural points that we use to, you know, solder the case or the shield into place, but just enough to give us a little extra space there. Coming back over here and looking at this again, the rest position for the optical pickup assembly, lower and upper, is determined by an optical sensor, not any type of micro switch. And over on the cam gear, I did notice there is a micro switch there, but again, not hearing any struggling or hesitation with motors running in this. So again, not gonna condemn any of that. So I think the next thing to do, obviously, we'll put this board back in, and we'll see if we've got a winner with this. Did a lot of work to it, so I'm hoping that this will do it. So give me a few minutes for that, and we'll pick back up and see if we got a working unit. All right, we're going to pick back up, having it all back together now. Boards remounted back in the unit, all the ribbon cables connected up, all the power supply lines connected up. And this time when we turn it on, a little different. Comes on, stays on, and appears to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. So now that we've overcome that obstacle, let's get the camera set up in the tripod and let's start doing a little testing with it. First thing we'll do is just a regular old compact disc. We'll see how it does with that, and then we'll move on to laser discs. So give me a second for that, and we'll come back. So we'll pick back up, just doing an audio test with a CD. Needless to say, this is the one that we'll be using, since this is the theme we're kind of doing for this video. And it's always nice if the unit will actually stay on when you're trying to operate it. The tray gives you multiple cutouts. You get the 3-inch and the 5-inch for the music, the 8-inch and the 12-inch for the laser discs or the karaoke disc. So they got you covered on pretty much any disc you want to put in here. Spins the disc over, it will not read table of contents right here. It just goes to the stop, and then from that point you hit the play. So here we go. On the back of this unit, they do have an attenuation button or switch. When I seen that, I was wondering to myself, I wonder why they have that. But after first hearing a disc played in it, I realized why they had it. The signal coming out of the unit is pretty hot, and just running at line level, you'll want to have that switch in the on position. And when I found the unit, the switch was in the on position. So I think the song I really want to play off this, obviously the most famous one from this album, is Wasted Years. So we'll play a little bit of that, and then we'll move on to some video testing. But it just wouldn't be right to have this album in the unit without playing a little bit of Wasted Years. So let's hear a little bit of that. Well, the unit sounds fantastic. I don't hear anything that I shouldn't be hearing. It sounds really, really clean, really, really clear, and just a very nice unit, very well made. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and let's take this out. Let's put in one of our laser discs and get an idea of picture. And let's see what we got here. What I might be able to get away with. How about the sampler disc? Let's look at the Sony sampler disc. All right, here we go. And it's going to ramp up hard here to spin that big heavy disc.
Welcome to the dawn of a new era of unsurpassed audio and video performance. Brought to you by Sony, the leader in optical disc. As you know, the compact disc has allowed families to bring the excitement and fidelity of live concerts right into the home. It's only natural that Sony, the leader in optical disc technology, would muster its resources to bring you the next generation in this exciting new era of video and audio integration. Digital stereo soundtracks like you've never heard before. And now, breathtaking pictures with resolution like you've never seen before with the exciting Sony AV Laserdisc player. Here in this single player, you can play both audio compact discs reproduced in all of their purity and digital audio brilliance, and laser video discs capable of delivering a spectacular 425-line horizontal resolution color picture with digital stereo sound. Now you can have the high-resolution picture and lifelike stereo sound that takes full advantage of today's high-quality televisions with sound and image far better than any consumer VCR. No wonder Laserdisc Video was the unanimous choice of the experts at Video Magazine when they evaluated the performances of all the consumer video formats. In terms of color accuracy, resolution, contrast, you name it, Laser won hands down in every category. The unsurpassed video and audio performance of the Sony AV Laserdisc player is further enhanced by such features as random access memory. Just by touching your remote control, you can access any point on the compact disc or Laserdisc almost instantly. You can choose your favorite song or scene without
And we shall demonstrate that right now.
Program. And with the as you'd expect, there are hundreds of blockbuster movies with exciting new titles being released. This library includes hundreds of classic films that help you recapture cherished memories and study the tech. Laserdisc also offers a diverse and sometimes
Now we're going to make it flip
software,
from
including the best from the performing arts,
the bottom side of that disc over to the top side.
art
So
collections from some of the world's
I'm going to
great
take the
museums
camera off the
and many
tripod
other
for that because
specialty
we want to
titles.
check this out. All right, so we're going to go to side B. And it ramps up,
If you're
going the
into
opposite
music,
direction.
Laserdisc is the medium for you.
But we didn't really
With
get a
the
good look at the
assortment
laser.
you
Let's try it again. We'll put it back to the other
folk,
side.
Jazz, country.
All right, and let's switch it back one last time. That is just too damn cool.
If you're into music watching, Laserdisc is the medium for you, with the assortment you'd expect in rock, folk, jazz, country, and classical.
And we'll try the scan. Looking good. Not perfectly jitter-free though. That's not too bad. Looks good. All right, I think we've done enough testing with this. I'm going to go ahead and get the top lid of the unit back on, and we're going to do a final playback test using the S-Video, dropping it into the Samsung 55-inch over here, and that'll wrap it up for this one. So it'll take me a second to get that set up, and then we'll come back. All right, so as we bring to a close the repair of the Sony MDP-600 Laserdisc player, got the unit hooked up, S-Video going into the 55-inch TV, got an audio return coming out of the unit back over to the mixer so we can hear the audio for this in clarity. And I can think of no other clip that we would want to play off of this other than the late great Rutger Hauer's beautifully improvised Tears in Rain scene from the ending of this movie. So I think we got this far enough back to where it shouldn't be an issue, so hopefully we do not get the blocked worldwide for using this little bit of video. I want to thank you guys if you hung around watching this or checking it out, and you know, just haven't had any audio things come up lately. It's all been video projects, so hopefully we'll get audio going next time. So let's go ahead and get this started up, and we'll hear Rutger's beautiful performance.
I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die.
Again, thank you guys very much for checking this video out, and we'll catch you on the next one.